The rain poured relentlessly over the city, blurring the glow of streetlights and washing away the noise of the crowd. Inside a quiet cafe near the corner, a man in a tailored black suit sat alone, staring at the melting ice in his untouched coffee. His eyes were hollow, tired, not from work, but from the weight of a promise he couldn't keep. Ethan Cole, 34 years old, CEO of one of the country's top construction empires, looked like a man who had everything, yet that night he felt like a man who had already lost it all. 3 years ago, he lost his wife, his best friend, his anchor, his daughter's mother. Since then, his world had been reduced to two things: his little girl, Emma, and his endless work to distract himself from the pain. But tomorrow was Emma's 7th birthday, the first one she had insisted should be just like before, with Mommy. Those words had shattered him. No amount of money or power could bring back her mother's smile. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of love that heals even the deepest wounds, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to this channel. Your small gesture helps us bring more emotional and inspiring stories like this to life. Back in the cafe, Ethan scrolled through old pictures of Emma's birthdays, his wife in a soft blue dress, laughter echoing through their old home, a sense of completeness that now felt like a memory from another lifetime. He had already hired magicians, clowns, and even booked a private amusement park for Emma's special day. Yet, when she softly whispered, "Daddy, can Mommy come just for one day?" he had no answer. He had promised her everything, but he couldn't promise that. That's when fate intervened. Sitting a few tables away was a young woman, soaked from the rain, her hair tangled, her hands trembling as she clutched a letter. Her name was Lila Grant, a woman whose life had taken a cruel turn. Once an aspiring artist, she was now struggling to pay rent and survive in the same city that once celebrated her dreams. Ethan noticed her when she quietly asked the waiter if she could pay for her coffee later. Her voice soft, embarrassed, her dignity barely holding on. Something inside Ethan stirred. It wasn't pity, it was recognition. The same exhaustion, the same emptiness. They were both people trying to survive different kinds of loneliness. When their eyes met, the world outside seemed to quiet down. He didn't know her name, she didn't know his story, but somehow, for a brief moment, they both saw something familiar. The ache of missing someone, the struggle of holding things together when they're already falling apart. Ethan hesitated for several minutes, then finally stood up and walked toward her. His voice was gentle, unsure, almost desperate. "Excuse me," he said quietly, "this may sound insane, but would you consider pretending to be my wife for 1 week?" Lila blinked, unsure if she'd heard him right. He quickly explained, his words spilling out faster than his thoughts. His daughter's birthday, her wish, his helplessness, the emotional storm he'd tried to hide. At first she thought it was a cruel joke, some wealthy man's strange idea of entertainment. But when she saw the pain in his eyes, the trembling in his hands, she realized it wasn't. This was a father begging not for himself but for his child. Lila's heart softened. She didn't have much to lose, just an empty apartment and unpaid bills. But for the first time in months, someone was asking her not for her money, not for her art, but for her kindness. She agreed. "Just 1 week," she said. "That's all." The next morning, a black car arrived outside her small apartment. She hesitated before stepping in, still unsure if she was making a mistake. But when she saw Emma waiting at the mansion's gate, a little girl in a pink dress clutching a stuffed rabbit, every doubt vanished. Emma's face lit up the second she saw Lila. "Mommy!" she cried, running into her arms. For a second, Lila froze. The little girl's arms were warm, her voice pure, her belief unshaken. Lila didn't have the heart to correct her. She hugged Emma back, whispering softly, "I missed you, sweetheart." Over the next few days, the house that had been silent for years began to come alive again. Lila's laughter echoed through the hallways. She painted with Emma in the garden, baked cupcakes, told bedtime stories, and even helped Ethan remember how to smile again. The staff couldn't believe the change. Their cold, distant boss was suddenly human again, his eyes lighter, his voice softer. But behind every smile, both Ethan and Lila carried unspoken truths. Ethan knew this happiness was borrowed time, and Lila knew that when the week ended, she'd return to her lonely world, leaving behind a little girl who believed in miracles. The night before Emma's birthday, Lila stood in the garden, watching the fairy lights shimmer in the dark. Ethan joined her quietly, his voice low. "You've done more for her, for us, than you realize," he said. "Thank you." She looked at him, the glow of the lights reflecting in her eyes. "You don't have to thank me, Ethan. I just didn't want her to lose her smile because of what life took from her." For a long moment they stood there in silence. The air was heavy with something they both felt but didn't dare name. The next day arrived, Emma's long-awaited birthday. The entire mansion was decorated with pink and white balloons, laughter filled every corner, and Emma's joy was brighter than the morning sun. She held both their hands as they cut the cake, her eyes sparkling. "This is the best birthday ever," she squealed. "We're together again." Ethan tried to smile, but his heart twisted with guilt. He couldn't bear the thought of Emma's tears when she discovered the truth. That night, after everyone left, Lila went to say goodbye. She had packed her things, ready to slip away quietly, but Emma found her. First, "Mommy, are you going somewhere?" she asked, clutching Lila's hand. Lila knelt down, her voice breaking. "Sweetheart, I'm not really your mommy. I just wanted to make sure your birthday was special." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "But you made Daddy smile again, and you made me happy. Isn't that what mommies do?" Lila couldn't hold back anymore. She hugged her tightly, tears falling freely. "Yes, my love, that's exactly what they do." Ethan stood silently in the doorway, watching the two people who had unknowingly repaired his broken heart. He walked in, his eyes glistening. "Lila," he said softly, "please stay." But Lila shook her head. "You don't need me, Ethan. You just needed hope again." She turned to leave, but Ethan stepped closer. "You're wrong. I needed you, and so did she." His voice trembled. "You reminded me what love feels like. Not the kind that's lost, but the kind that heals." Lila closed her eyes, fighting back her emotions. "You don't even know me," she whispered. "I know enough," he replied. "I know that you showed up when no one else did. I know that my daughter hasn't laughed like this in years. And I know that for the first time since I lost my wife, I don't feel alone." Lila's breath caught. Her heart wanted to believe him, but her mind warned her not to. She had been let down too many times before. The next morning, Lila was gone. No note, no goodbye, just a small painting left on the table, a picture of Emma laughing, holding both her parents' hands beneath a blue sky. Weeks passed. The mansion grew quiet again, though not as hollow as before. Ethan found himself staring at the painting every night, remembering her laughter, her kindness, the way she'd brought light into their lives. Emma missed her deeply, often asking when she would come back. Then, one sunny afternoon, while Ethan was leaving a charity event downtown, he saw her again, standing outside an art gallery, dressed simply, a shy smile on her face. Inside, on the main display, was a new painting titled "1 Week of Forever." It showed a family, a man, a woman, and a little girl, holding hands by the sea. Ethan walked toward her slowly, his heart racing. "You kept your promise," he said quietly. Lila turned to him, tears filling her eyes. "And you kept yours. You made her happy." He took her hand gently. "I don't want this to be just a week anymore." She looked at him for a long moment, then smiled through her tears. "Neither do I." That day, under the same sun that once saw two strangers cross paths by chance, they began again, not as a CEO and a stranger, but as two broken souls who finally found the courage to heal together. Because sometimes, love doesn't come in grand gestures or perfect timing. Sometimes, it begins with a desperate plea. "Can you pretend to be my wife for 1 week?" and ends with something real, something forever. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more emotional stories that remind us how love and kindness can change lives. Before you go, tell us in the comments, would you say yes to a stranger if it meant bringing a little girl's smile back?